Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, running dry in California, the partisan fight over the drought on Capitol Hill, plus the legal victory that may spell out relief for San Diego water users.
San Diego's plan to eliminate all trash going to the Miramar landfill in the next 25 years gets the go-ahead from the City Council. How the zero waste plan could affect curbside trash collection. Then, should internships be paid or unpaid? I'm Peggy Pico with how new legislation impacts internships and employers.
Tempting caffeine addicts in the Golden State, a new industry brewing now, the farmers who want to transform it into the next big thing. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Guilty of murder. That's the verdict today in the trial of a Colorado movie theater shooter, James Holmes. It took jurors just 12.5 hours to come to a decision convicting the 27-year-old Holmes of 12 counts of first-degree murder. Holmes, who grew up in San Diego, pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The next question is whether he will face the death penalty or life in prison. PBS NewsHour will have more on the verdict. That's coming up at 7 tonight. A wildfire destroyed one building today in the North County. It broke out around 11:30 on State Route 76, just south of Palomar Mountain near Lake Henshaw. CAL FIRE says it started in an abandoned building. 25 acres burned. The fire is at about 50% containment tonight. The cause still under investigation. Some relief from the drought from Capitol Hill. Congress members passed a measure designed to bring more water to California's Farm Belt. The legislation backed by Republicans would take more water out of the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. It also seeks to speed up studies for a handful of new or expanded dams. There is, however, some opposition from the White House and Democrats who say diverting more water to farms will take water from other California communities. A major legal victory for San Diego water officials. The case involves how much San Diego pays to move water from the Imperial Valley. Joining us to talk about the ruling is KPBS reporter Eric Anderson. Eric, what did the court rule?
Well, Dwayne, the judge basically determined that the Metropolitan Water District overcharged San Diego County's Water Authority when it calculated how much it costs to move water through its aqueduct. The transportation cost jumped sharply when San Diego began buying water from the Imperial Irrigation District back in 2003.
Now, Eric, are we talking about a lot of money here?
Yeah, it's a pretty big chunk of cash. The judge ruling that San Diego was overcharged $188 million between 2010 and 2014. A refund would be shared proportionally by all the water districts and cities that the Water Authority serves here. San Diego County's Water Authority's Dennis Cushman says the judge clearly saw what the problem was here. Now, San Diego officials have filed a similar suit contesting rates for 2015 and 2016, which will be resolved once this first case works its way through the appeals process. Local officials estimate they're paying roughly $55 million a year too much. Now, over the life of a water transfer deal they signed with Imperial County, that could add up to more than $2 billion in overcharges.
$2 billion in overcharges. So what happens next?
Well, there will be an appeal. The Metropolitan Water District has already promised that. Once there is a ruling at the appellate court level, it will likely be challenged to the state Supreme Court. So a final decision could still be a couple of years off.
KPBS reporter Eric Anderson. The San Diego North Economic Development Council held a water summit today. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says the region has its own strategies for dealing with the drought.
North County has a coalition of 10 different water agencies that are working together to recycle 3.5 billion gallons of water a year through purple pipes to the neighborhoods. Because North County has fewer and more scattered water treatment plants, it's easier to distribute the water to neighborhoods than it is in the city of San Diego. But North County is looking to the city of San Diego to take the lead when it comes to potable reuse. That's water that's recycled to drinking levels. And one member of the coalition told me that if San Diego residents are drinking recycled water in 5 years, then North County residents can expect to be drinking recycled water within 10 years. The Water Summit also covered agriculture and biotech. Agriculture, they're using a great deal less water, less than half the water than they used in 2007. Biotech said, well, the reason that they came to Oceanside in one case was because of water accessibility. So that is crucial, and they're looking at all kinds of ways of recycling, including using the water they buy in their cooling towers. From the North County Bureau, I'm Alison St. John for KPBS.
And you can find more stories and information on California's drought for our online section called Running Dry, from recycling water to fixing pools. You can also see what other folks are doing to save water. Just go to kpbs.org/drought. 4 U.S. Marines are dead after a shooting at 2 military facilities today in Tennessee. The FBI says the shooter is dead as well. That shooting happened in the city of Chattanooga. Agents there have identified the shooter as a 24-year-old believed to have been born in Kuwait. He is a U.S. citizen, native. Witnesses say the gunman stopped his car, spraying dozens of bullets first, and then apparently drove to the second location about 7 miles away. FBI is still investigating the motive.
This is a sad day for the United States. These service members served their country with pride, and they have been the victims of these shootings. We are conducting this as an act of domestic terrorism.
Agents raided the suspected gunman's home this afternoon and arrested 2 women there. So far, agents are not saying whether the shootings were an act of terrorism. San Diego military bases were not affected by the shootings today at a military facility in Tennessee. Officials at Navy Region Southwest and Camp Pendleton say they were not ordered to boost security. The Homeland Security Department says it was enhancing security measures at certain federal facilities, but did not say which ones. Providing shelter, services, and hope for homeless veterans, tomorrow Stand Down begins at San Diego High School downtown. This marks the 28th year for the event, where vets and their families will receive food, clothing, showers, medical, as well as dental care over the next 3 days. The latest count of the homeless population in the county shows at least 15% had once served in the military. The trolley's Blue Line is coming to UC San Diego, and the university bought the naming rights to it. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler tells us eventually UC San Diego's Blue Line will go all the way to Oceanside.
The Metropolitan Transit System Board of Directors unanimously voted to enter into a 30-year agreement with UCSD, giving them the naming rights to 2 on-campus trolley stations, the Old Town Station, and the entire, though unfinished, Blue Line. MTS gets about $1 million a year out of the deal. The money is coming from UC San Diego Health's marketing budget, but it's a cooperative effort with the university. UC San Diego's Health's Kim Kennedy says both the university and the hospital need more exposure.
You know, we compete with the regional hospital systems, and we have to use advertising and partnerships to raise our brand awareness. I have felt that it's a better spend for our advertising dollars to do that through community partners and with partners like MTS.
Now, at the board meeting, most of the opposition came from the University City Planning Commission, and they aren't necessarily opposed to the deal, but they do want more community involvement. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
A new plan to divert waste from the city's Miramar landfill got approval from the City Council on Monday. Peggy Pico explains how the change will affect curbside trash pickup.
The Zero Waste Plan aims to divert 75% of waste in San Diego from the Miramar landfill in the next 5 years. It's another step toward eliminating all trash going into the Miramar landfill by the year 2040. Joining me with how the plan could affect you and your trash are my guest, recycling manager Ken Prue with San Diego's Environmental Services, and Jessica Toth, executive director of Solana Center for Environmental Innovation. And Ken, How is this zero waste concept different from what we typically think of when we think of recycling with paper and plastic?
It's a way of just rethinking our discards or our waste and really thinking of them as resources or commodities and not just trash that you throw away, but really thinking of ways that you can reduce what you consume and then reuse things and then more with what you have left, really recycle as much as possible.
And when we're talking about zero waste, it's not exactly zero, right? What is ultimately the goal in 2040?
It's really as close to zero as possible. I mean, we're going to be taking steps to get there, but it's really a continuous improvement process and really getting as close to zero as we can. Will it be absolute zero? No, not likely, but with technologies evolving, hopefully we can get very close.
Very close. And Jessica, other cities have already begun zero waste efforts. And what are some of the notable benefits that they're seeing?
Increased landfill space and capacity, and very important is the amount of greenhouse gases that are created from particularly organic material when it off-gases is very potent to the environment. Los Angeles did a study recently and saw large heat sinks over where the landfills were, so it's a significant contributor to greenhouse gases. And any material that's put in the landfill, once it's in a landfill, it no longer has value. So whether it's recyclables or organic material that could be composted or used to feed people in need, it no longer has any value.
And Ken, what's included in this first phase of the city's plan for the zero waste?
It's really increasing recycling on all fronts and just really helping to educate and get people on board to recycle more, but it's also a lot more organics recycling related to a new state requirement, so a lot of food waste composting and things like that, and eliminating the exemption on our recycling ordinance so that all residents will have to have, and all residents and businesses will have to have recycling at their properties. Yeah. And a number of things, but a lot of really great, exciting programs.
So I'm hearing this thread, this organic waste, Jessica, this organic and yard waste. And it could be a new concept for San Diegans, but businesses here are actually going to be starting this soon.
That's true. So beginning next year, businesses that create a certain threshold amount of organic material will be required to send it elsewhere rather than the landfill, and that's going to make a big difference in the way they do business.
And when you say organic, you're talking about fruits, vegetables, plants?
Yes, let me break it down. There's the yard waste is a big component. We have great facilities around the county to handle yard waste, and another big portion is actual food waste, pre- and post-consumer food material. So it could be everything from agricultural cullings to what you're throwing away from your grocery store to what you're throwing away from your kitchen.
And who's going to be required to do this, to participate in this?
It begins next April with any businesses that generate 8 cubic yards or more a week, which would be your typical grocery store or your landfill, or your landscaping business. The next year it goes down to businesses creating 4 cubic yards or more a week.
Okay, so it'll be in phases with that.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Ken, this sounds like a lot of investment, a 25-year effort. How much is it going to cost, and who's going to pay for it?
Well, for the initial steps to get to 75%, it's going to be about $8 million primarily in revenue loss due to diverting materials from the landfill. But then we've implemented programs to make up for it. It's a combination. It's partly will be based on the service, the customers paying for their services, say multifamily and private businesses with their private haulers. There's elements coming out of the city's general fund. It's really from all sources. We have kind of a unique funding structure in San Diego.
So it'll be kind of a wash in the end. Is that correct? As far as you're going to be paying as you go?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, and each step, getting to 75%, we figured out a way to make it a wash, and then we'll have to keep addressing it because the more we divert, there'll always be associated impact with it. Okay,
and Jessica, we have to end on this in the short time we have left. Education and outreach is a major part of this, so what's the plan there?
Yes, everything from the homeowner. We've been teaching master composter classes since the mid-90s. There's a voucher program through the city of San Diego to buy subsidized compost bins for home, and then we are working with the large businesses right now to help them divert at the source reduction, feed people in need, all the way down the hierarchy to compost, keep it out of the landfill.
All right. Well, Jessica Toth and Ken Prue, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A bill in the state legislature proposes sweeping changes to the Public Utilities Commission. The new measure would reduce the power of the PUC president. It would also create a more robust process to determine whether commissioners are biased in cases they might consider. The measure would also establish new rules for communication between the PUC and the utilities it regulates. Nearly 2 decades after medical marijuana was legalized in California, support is growing for a bill to regulate it. The measure passed 2 Senate committees today, but is still moving through the state legislature. If passed, state agencies would get authority to oversee specific regulatory areas. Coffee stands might soon see a new brew homegrown by California farmers. They hope to create a new industry similar to what the region saw with wine decades ago. Associated Press reporter Haven Daly shows us how.
It's harvest time on this coffee farm. Bright red cherries that will eventually become a fancy pour-over cup by your local barista. But these are not the tropical mountains of Central or South America or anywhere else you'd expect coffee to come from. It's a 5-acre hillside near Santa Barbara, California.
Very unique growing condition because of the Pacific Ocean. It's a colder climate coming up to a desert, so we have a lot of fog that comes in.
Once thought impossible to grow this far from the equator, Goodland Organics was the first to figure out that coffee trees can actually thrive here along the California coastline. But the critical question, how does it taste? Excellent, according to several trade association ratings and reviews, and according to these visitors who came to the farm for a tasting and tour.
It tastes very well. It tastes similar to a lot of the Central Americans that I've tasted. It totally blew my mind because all I knew of coffee was that it grew on the equatorial belt of the world.
Since they're not mass-produced, the California beans are expensive, more than $60 a pound. But that hasn't stopped the farm from selling the beans as quickly as they can process them to coffee connoisseurs all over the world.
I think the coffee industry is really a very evolving industry. I feel like we're in the wine industry in the 80s.
But growing coffee in California isn't easy. It took about a decade to get the process just right. Unlike traditional coffee grown in rainforests, this farm has to strategically irrigate to deal with the drought. The owner is partnering with other coastal California farms with similar conditions to expand production.
So we're really trying to start an industry here, and we hope this will be a premium, well-recognized growing region in the next decade or so.
Which could really get California coffee off the ground. Haven Daly, Associated Press, Goleta, California.
Many college students spend summer vacation as interns with hopes of gaining experience and job connections for their future careers. Peggy Pico takes a look at the debate over unpaid internships.
More than 60% of college seniors hold internships during their college careers, says a national survey of graduating college students in 2014. But there's a wide discrepancy in what internships offer. This summer, a federal appeals court ruled on internship guidelines. Here with a deeper look at internships today are my guests, employment law attorney Dan Eaton and James Tarbucks, executive director of career services at San Diego State University. And Dan, what are employers legally required to provide for unpaid interns?
Right, under a test that dates back to a 1947 Supreme Court decision and later adopted by the Department of Labor in a 2010 fact sheet, they have the following criteria. One is that, is this experience more like that offered in a vocational school, even though it is technically part of their operations? Does the intern benefit more than the so-called employer? Does the intern displace an actual worker? And does the employer develop any kind of immediate advantage from that? Can't do that. Is there an understanding between them that there will be no wages offered for this work? Those are the kind of criteria, and courts look at it as far as the totality of the circumstances. So not all of these have to be filled, but you certainly have to have a situation where the bottom line is that the employer cannot. The sixth criteria, which I didn't mention, is the employer cannot obtain an immediate advantage. With an underline on immediate, they can get some kind of advantage, but just not an immediate one, so that the intern will probably get in the way a little bit during this training process that is the internship.
Well, what did the most recent federal appeals court ruling say as far as the use of unpaid interns?
I said, look, let's not rely on a 1947 Supreme Court decision and the Department of Labor standards accepting it. That had to do with a railroad brakeman. What they said is, let's look at who the primary beneficiary of the internship is, and is it tied to some kind of an educational experience. That's the kind of thing that you have to look at rather than a rigid six-part test.
Well, let me ask you this, James. Do most employers these days, do they offer internships?
Many do. At a national level, for example, the most recent survey of recruiting, university recruiting employers, about 97% said they were going to be offering them, and a majority of those were going to be offering paid internships.
That was my next question. When we're talking about paid or unpaid, so most of them are paid at this point?
Most of them are paid.
Okay, and is there like a salary range for internships?
That's a really good question. You know, things like the state law would govern the minimum wage, and some programs are set up such that the intern would get some sort of like bulk compensation at the end, like $1,500 for going through it. If it's not normally paid, some schools provide that sort of stipend for the student while they're going through.
Like an hour, but there are hourly wages, you know, some, like if you were in an engineering type of internship,
right,
you might get an hourly wage that looks pretty good.
And those look very good. Those typically hover between, I would say, around $20 and $27 an hour.
Yeah, so not a bad internship. That's what Dan's thinking right there. Now, Dan, give us an example of legitimate and then maybe an illegitimate type of internship.
Well, Peggy, in 2010, the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, commonly called the Labor Board, issued an opinion letter on what could be a legitimate internship, and that dealt with an organization that helps for-profit employers find interns, but there was a specific educational component where these interns actually did some did some community college training and then were sent out to high-tech employers, typically to do some sort of computer training, troubleshooting, and so forth. That's okay. Really, a key to a legitimate internship is there a clear educational component to it? And if it is, it's more likely to be found to be acceptable, even in the for-profit sector, which is what we're talking about here. I
see. Now, James, what advice do you have for students who say, all right, no, I need an internship. I need to, how do you find a good one? How do you go about getting one?
Right. Well, they may take it at university in a number of different ways. There are 45 programs on campus at San Diego State that have 4-credit internships, and we typically have about 1,800 students that complete those. They can also look on Aztec Career Connection, which is our system, and we offer just over 2,000 internships a year during the academic year, and we actually poll employers and we say, hey, did you hire our students? And we find out that just under 2,000 of them did. And those are paid internships, not offered in a class.
I see. So a student would go through to their professor or go through their program director in order to do this.
One of the criteria is there cannot be any kind of immediate expectation that a job will result from the internship. Exactly. That's one of the 6 elements.
Yes, correct. So much more to talk about this, but because I think we've all probably had an internship at one point.
Yes.
So Dan Eaton and James Tarbox, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. Could a new tax help reduce the effects of climate change? That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
A new art show on display at Mike Hess Brewing called Japanese Monster. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando says there were 23 San Diego artists displaying their work and one who was not.
Hi. I'm here to pick up a piece of my art that was not going to be used in the show. They told me that anyone who worked here could give it to me.
Can you tell me what exactly?
Yeah, it's just a big black pieces of folded paper.
That's it?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't even know if this is art. I'm just trying to have some fun. It's what it is. This is my medium. I work with ephemeral culture, newspapers, comic books, all these things, and tape.
That ephemeral medium posed a problem for curator Cami Faroque when she was considering how to hang it in the gallery at Mike Hess Brewing.
I couldn't use his piece because there was no means for me to install it on the wall without actually damaging the piece of artwork.
Noricho said his art can just be taped to the wall.
Just try and have some fun with some Godzilla, with Mexico, with Japan, and mostly the memory of me growing up in a border town, Laredo, Texas, movie house. That's what I remember. Imagine Cinema Paradiso, meets El Santo and the big guy in the rubber suit. That was my life for me. That was my reality in the border, on the border, and most importantly, with the border.
Meanwhile, inside Mike Hess Brewing, more than 20 works representing a diversity of styles were on display, including this one by Aaron Summers.
This piece that's up here is acrylic on canvas and enamel. I use the enamel to really emphasize the splatter of destruction and really give the painting some kind of movement. That's what I like to capture in all of my paintings, is movement.
For this show, I created Mothra. He's a creature that fights Godzilla in the old school movies. And what I did, I used my style. I kind of recycling from the wood to the cans that I use. I break up spray cans, make them look sharp, spiky, to make it look like aggressive.
23 artists were lucky enough to be included in Japanese Monster, a group art show. Naricho's El Santo vs. Godzilla may not have been on display inside Mike Hess Brewing last night, but it got an impromptu showing by the dumpster in the alley behind the brewery.
Where'd you get the poster, dude?
I made it. Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And that suited Naricho just fine. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Well, we may see some rain with increased humidity from Baja California and San Diego this weekend. Now, the forecast shows a chance for some showers along the coast, even lightning there, with temperatures in the 70s and 80s over the next few days. Warmer inland with temperatures in the 80s and 90s. Stormy weather expected for the mountains with temperatures in the 80s and 70s, and more rain expected in the desert. Not much of a change in temperatures, triple digits. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.